Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, October 13th, 2025. Ray McGovern will be with us in just a moment on Tomahawks, the START Treaty, and the Russians, and of course, his take on the events in Jerusalem earlier today. But first, this. While the markets are giving us whiplash, have you seen the price of gold? It's soaring. In the past 12 months, gold has risen to more than $3,000 an ounce. I'm so glad I bought my gold. It's not too late for you to buy yours. The same experts that predicted gold at $3,200 an ounce now predict gold at $4,500 or more in the next year. What's driving the price higher? Paper currencies. All around the world, they are falling in value. Big money is in panic as falling currencies shrink the value of their paper wealth. That's why big banks and billionaires are buying gold in record amounts. As long as paper money keeps falling, they'll keep buying, and gold will keep rising. So do what I did. Call my friends at Lear Capital. You'll have a great conversation, and they'll send you very helpful information. Learn how you can store gold in your IRA tax and penalty free, or have it sent directly to your doorstep. There's zero pressure to buy, and you have a 100% risk-free purchase guarantee. It's time to see if gold is right for you. Call 800-511-4620, 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Ray McGovern, good day to you, my friend. Thank you, as always, for being here. Before we get to Russia, Tomahawks, and the soon expiring START treaty, what is your take on what has been happening this morning in Jerusalem? Is this a substantial ceasefire? Will this lead to peace, or is this just performative for Netanyahu and Trump?
Well, Judge, even before we get to that, I want to congratulate you on your Landsman, Christopher Columbus, being rehabilitated by the president. I don't know what you may have had to do with that, but I think it's really, really neat.
I have discussed many things with the president in our private conversations during his first term, but never this. But I did once live in the Trump International Hotel and Tower, which is one of his favorite buildings, on Columbus Circle in New York City.
I'm just wondering, is Benito Mussolini next?
I hope not.
I just thought I'd inject a little. I mean, it's been a bleak, depressing morning so far. I compliment you on having all these truth tellers on. That was a little lighter moment. Now let me proceed to what's going on here. And you asked for what's going on in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem today. We ought to talk to Palestinians who are worthy listening to. And one such is Professor Sami Al-Arian, former professor at the University of Southern Florida, Tampa, who was harassed by the FBI, jailed for many years. I knew him quite well because as he had to wear his ankle bracelet, he lived 2 miles away from me in the Washington area. This is what he said today. He's a professor in Istanbul now. The grand deception genocide can't be erased by PR. The mass murder of tens of thousands of Gaza people, majority of whom are children and women, won't be forgotten. No speech launders a crime scene. No summit absolves a genocide. A racist movement, a supremacist ideology cannot stand. And so, Chaz Freeman is a diplomat. I'm not, okay? And I would just point out that according to respected studies in Oxford and in Harvard, we have 1/10 of the Gazan Palestinian population already killed or severely wounded. That's over 200,000. And this is a temporary respite in this. And the goings on in the parliament there, the Knesset in Jerusalem, were revolting because these people are out and out War criminals, I'll say it again, they're criminals of war criminals. They need to be held accountable because sure as we're sitting here, the genocide will start again as soon as some pretext is found to start it.
Here's one war criminal requesting a second war criminal to pardon a third war criminal. Chris, cut number 12.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Come on. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
$139,000 worth of cigars and champagnes. He was referring to Netanyahu as the president. Of course, he's the prime minister. The person who was the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, is the one whom he asked to pardon Netanyahu. How people can gloat and applaud, and Netanyahu can beam, and Trump can refer to him as great in any respect other than a horrific one, is beyond me.
Well, your and my tax dollars to the tune of $22 billion since October 7th, 2 years ago, have gone to support this genocide. It's time for us to do something about it. This is beyond the pale. I remember I was alive during the first genocide there in Germany with the Jews. I mean, this should not be happening again. And right. I just, with all this stuff, I rejoice that the hostages are free. I see Netanyahu already cheating, as I said several days ago, with Harwan Barghouti being stricken off the list. He's the natural leader of a new Palestine to the degree he's compos mentis now, given what the Israelis have done to him. So the cheating has already begun. Let's not rejoice too much. Let's be happy with the hostages' families, and let's realize what we're dealing with here: war criminals.
Where is the Western media showing the release of the Palestinian hostages?
That's a good question, Judge. I suspect they're nowhere because they are likely to be not in such good health, and many of them perhaps emaciated. They've been in prison in Israel for a long, long time, some of them for decades, including Marwan Barghouti.
Yeah. What will Trump do when, not if, when Netanyahu resumes bombing? Before you answer, Trump was asked that the other day. Here's his answer. If you think it's an answer, cut number 1.
What guarantees Hamas disarms and that Israel doesn't resume bombing once the hostages are released?
The first thing we're doing is getting our hostages back, okay? And that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
Yeah, that's called circumlocution. That's right. Called avoidance. That's called, hey, let's not talk about phase 2, just like the last time earlier this year. What happened about phase 2? So, again, let's not be deceived here. This is a temporary pause caused by external political situation, especially the drifting away of many Jewish people in our country from support, knee-jerk support for Israel. Now, I understand Miriam Adelson was up in the balcony there at the Knesset. She's not typical of most Americans, and we have to make our voices heard.
Here's what President Trump said about Mossad's wealthiest asset. Cut number 11.
He's got $60 billion in the bank, $60 billion. I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it, and they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the president of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in, we would do. But they were very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel. Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must tell you.
What do you love?
Holy cow.
Right. What do you love more,
Whoa.
Dr. Adelson, the United States or Israel? No answer.
Well, that's when her hair stood right up. Did you see the hair went right up? Oh my God. So she wouldn't answer. You know, this is despicable. It all has to do with money and the influence of the Israel lobby and the fact that the president seems to be incapable of acting on his own here, despite the fact that he finances and enables, God help us, forced starvation and now genocide. Let's see how many of those trucks get into Gaza. I'm hopeful, but not for very long. I imagine they'll stop getting in about a week or so. Mark my words.
Transitioning over to the START treaty and to Tomahawks. We'll start with Tomahawks, Ray. Here's a rather ominous statement the president made on Friday. Chris, cut number 9.
We talked about weapons, and the weapons are sent to NATO, and NATO then sends us a check. They pay for them in full, and they would need more weapons, and we're looking into doing that. We hope we're going to be able to provide them. They'd like to have Tomahawks. That's a step up. They'd like to have Tomahawks. We talked about that, and so we'll see. Well, I don't know. I might have to speak to Russia, to be honest with you, about Tomahawks. Do they want to have Tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness. I told that to President Zelensky, because Tomahawks are a new step of aggression.
Are you saying that you will speak to Putin first about Tomahawks?
I might talk to him. I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send him Tomahawks. I may say that. If the war is not settled, that we may very well do it. We may not, but we may do it. I think it's appropriate to bring up. Yeah.
I need to correct what I said. That was not Friday. That was yesterday afternoon or evening. We don't know the exact time, on Air Force One, flying from the United States to Israel. What is your understanding of Tomahawks? Are they deadly? Are they old? Are they slow? Can we afford them? Can the Russians shoot them down? Will it accelerate the war?
Judge, I remember Tomahawks from when they were destroyed, according to the terms of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. They were pretty accurate then. They were pretty good. But there aren't any anymore. And there certainly aren't any that could be given to the Europeans. This is the big charade here. Now, you showed when Alistair was on earlier this morning, the clip about the president of Belarus saying what really Putin has been saying. He was talking to Putin's favorite interviewer, Pavel Zarubin. This is what he said. Look, I think we need to be calming down here, says the head of Belarus.
Lukashenko.
Right. Our friend Donald, I repeat, quote, our friend Donald has certain traits for working. Sometimes he presses ahead and is pretty pretty hard. He inclines the relevant authorities one way, and then it's a tactic because then he lets go a little bit and then he moves away. So look, you don't need to worry. You don't need to take this heads on. Let's wait. Let's see. There are no Tomahawks going to be flying anytime soon. Now, the physics of this thing and the availability of Tomahawks are shown by people who know which end is up, and this includes Scott Ritter. They cannot possibly get to Europe if Europe could pay for them in about 2 or 3 years. By that time, the war will be over. The Russians are making incredible advances in the Donetsk area, and the Russians are going to finish off the Ukrainians. I would wager by the end of the year, long before any rehabilitated or newly made Tomahawks could ever make it to Europe. It's a red herring. And actually, even Putin said, look, this is for domestic purposes, not only in the United States, but with the Europeans. The United States feels some sort of obligation to show the Europeans, we're with you, Tomahawks. The president doesn't know what he's talking about, or else he's being deliberately deceptive on that plane.
Here is that clip from the Belarusian President Lukashenko, and we can only assume, because he's so close to President Putin, this might as well have come from President Putin. Cut number 6.
I think we need to calm down in this regard. I've told you, perhaps, that our friend, U.S. President Donald has his own tactics for working on the most pressing issues. He pressures certain authorities and people, acts harshly, then he eases off and steps back. So we shouldn't take it literally, as if the missiles will start flying tomorrow. He understands it shouldn't happen, and it won't come to this. That's how I understand the situation, knowing him a little as a person. So everything will be fine. Russia is advancing on the front. I speak responsibly because I can see what is happening every day. This could lead to Ukraine disappearing as a state. Just look at Ukraine's mad neighbors to the west, the forces and states that already see themselves in Western Ukraine. They are ready to seize part of Ukraine, as it was before World War II. You understand what we are talking about, too. That is why there is such fierce fighting there. I would like the Ukrainian president to hear my words and realize that only the Slavic states can bring happiness to Ukraine. That is why we need to sit down and reach an agreement.
I think this is profound, don't you, Ray?
Well, he's speaking for Putin. Now, Putin can't say those things. I mean, he's under considerable pressure. Gil Doctorow is right in saying that Putin has been so unctuous. I had to look up that word to make sure I know how to spell it yesterday. Unctuous is sort of fawning, saying, oh, listen, Donald, we're with you. We understand. Actually, when we were in Beijing, there wasn't one person said anything wrong about you. We all. So he's bending over backwards not to alienate Trump. Now, he's under a lot of fire for that. If I were a Russian citizen, I'd say, what the hell's going on here? Okay. Now, so here is the head of Belarus talking for Putin with Putin's favorite journalist. And, when Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, spoke about 5 days ago and said, look, Anchorage is exhausted. It's over. Well, he was taken to task, wasn't he, by Peskov, by Ushakov, by Putin himself. Now, what was that all about? My guess is that Ryabkov has a history, Judge. Now, he was the one that was negotiating with Wendy Sherman on the 9th and 10th of January 2022 before the balloon went up in Ukraine, okay? President Biden had promised Putin in a telephone call on the 30th of December, so less than 10 days before, that the U.S. had no intention of putting offensive strike missiles in Ukraine. That was rejoiced about by Ushakov and everyone else on New Year's Eve. And then comes the 9th of January, and Ryabkov comes in and he says, Wendy, let's get going on this. Let's flesh out this agreement. And she says, what are you talking about? Well, what President Biden said on the 30th of January. I don't have any instructions on that. I don't. So I think, yeah, of course, even diplomats can get really pissed off. Okay,
Right.
and I think he's thinking, "Oh, we've been taken to the cleaners again." So I think he let his emotions get a little bit ahead of him. I think he's probably back in the corral now. But that could just show you how much resentment there is for having been taken down the garden path, and then the president himself being reversed by the likes of Sullivan and Blinken, which is exactly what happened. And we have Lavrov saying that, we have others saying that, and that led indirectly to the invasion of Ukraine.
The Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, which expires on February 4th next year, just 4 months from now. Do you think, I don't know how you could know this, who could get in Trump's head? Do you think the government has ever mind to extend it again?
Yes, I do. It just makes such good sense. The only thing against that is the military industrial complex, which would have to delay billions and billions of profits. Okay. Why I think that is because Trump did say, I think that's a pretty good idea, and the Russians are now saying, okay, well, we'd like something a little bit more formal, a little bit more official. I mean, could you at least say, okay, we're not going to increase the number of missiles beyond those delimited. I think it's 1,550 offensive missiles on each side. Let's not go beyond that for a whole year. February 5 starts the year. Let's do that. It makes eminent good sense, Judge. I think, and this is just a guess, but I think Trump will come around and say, yeah, let's do this.
Wow. Well, Ray, thank you very much, my dear friend. Thank you for letting me take you all across the board from Gaza to Ukraine to Belarus. I appreciate so much your analysis, and thank you for pointing out to us that clip of President Lukashenko. Much appreciated.
Most welcome.
Thank
Oh,
you.
boy.
Thank you. All the best. We'll see you next week. And coming up later today at 11 this morning, Max Blumenthal. At 11:30, Larry Johnson. Pardon me. At 1 this afternoon, Scott Ritter. At 3:30 this afternoon, Colonel McGregor. At 4:30 this afternoon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.